My name is Miranda Aisling. I'm the founder of Miranda's Hearth, which is a nonprofit that's been around for 5.5 years, and our mission is to build a community through creativity that is approachable, affordable, and accessible. So thank you guys for having me here tonight, and thanks to everyone who came out from the Hearth. It's really wonderful to see such friendly faces in the room. I'm going to briefly introduce myself and what the business has done so far, and then discuss our proposal for our work in Beverly, and specifically our hopes for repurposing Briscoe Middle School as an art center. So Miranda's Hearth was founded in 2013 with 4 people in a 4-person jam session. And since then, we've grown to an organization that has served 25,000 people in the past 5.5 years. We've done that mostly in Greater Boston, focusing in Cambridge and Somerville, which is where I received my Master's of Education. But in July, we came up to Beverly for the first time, and we've been really excited to get to know this community through programming after over 2 years of research into where we should bring our efforts next. We have 120 plus events in 2019, half of which will be happening in Beverly, including a weekly community night, 2 festivals, which I'll mention later, and presentations like this to get the community involved in the project. So I myself has worked in arts administration. I was the director of operations and visual arts at the Umbrella Community Arts Center for 4 years. I wrote a book called Don't Make Art, Just Make Something, which has become the philosophical underpinnings for our community, where we encourage that creativity is innate in every single person. Some people suppress it and others develop it, but it is certainly there. I have a bachelor's in painting and pottery. I'm a practicing artist myself, and I think it's very important for anybody working in arts administration to keep up their own practice. And I also received a Master's of Education, like I mentioned, from Lesley University, which brought me to this area. And one of my mentors actually was Kit Jenkins, who brought me to the North Shore for the first time. She's one of the founding directors of Raw Artworks out in Lynn. So I cut my eye teeth in community art at their wonderful organization. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Umbrella. I worked there for 4 years, and it really showed me what's possible in old school buildings specifically. It's one of the precedents for our idea for Briscoe Middle School. The Umbrella was founded in 1983 in a building that had been around since 1929. By the time the artists got together to save this building, it had been empty for over 10 years, and there were literally stalactites growing from the ceiling of the theater. So I have a much more hope for Briscoe Middle School, which, while old and well used, does not have any stalactites. So to me, it seems like a positive approach to take. Currently, the Umbrella is home to over 55 artists, many of whom have been there since 1983, which shows you how steady artists are as renters. They've been there for over 30 years now, and the community that they've grown in that space is truly astonishing to see. I hope you guys will visit it. And very importantly, the reason that this could happen is because the Umbrella has been leasing the school building from the town of Concord for just $1 a year for the past 36 years. This has also happened in Art Space Maynard, which was actually founded by the former executive director of Emerson Umbrella, or the Umbrella. His name is Jerome Neeson, and I've had the pleasure of sitting down with him and getting his advice on this project based on his expertise repurposing many schools and other buildings throughout Massachusetts as art centers. So in Art Space, he really dialed down and made it as specific as possible, because if you make your business plan more simple, it is more likely to work. And so what we're trying to do is really follow his example, keeping it as simple as possible by taking raw studio space, raw classroom space, and turning it into artist space. So Art Space Maynard has had 80 artists in it since 2001. It has also been leased for $1 a year from the town of Maynard, and it's also an old middle school. I believe it's from the same era, although I could not find on their website the actual age of the building. So this is exactly what we would like to do here. It's worked in many towns throughout Massachusetts, and it creates a significant social and creative shift within the economy and within the community. Briscoe Middle School is larger than either of these buildings at 144,000 square feet. However, only 75,000 square feet of that is actually private rentable space. There's also that significant auditorium, the gym, and then quite a bit of circulation and mechanical space. So out of the 75,000 square feet, we estimate that we could have 150 to 200 artists. We would love to serve the artists in Beverly specifically. To put that number in perspective, Montserrat churns out at least 100 artists every single year, so their alums alone could fill that building in just 2 years. But I think there's a strong need throughout the North Shore region, and honestly all the way up from Boston. Several art centers are closing in Boston because of the increasing real estate value. And so people who have been practicing there for 30 years are suddenly without a home. And these are not amateur hobbyists, these are professional artists who've been working for a very long time. So we look forward to being able to serve the community here and certainly give precedent to the artists in Beverly. And I do think that we could fill this building just with artists from the North Shore. But if for some reason we couldn't, there is a strong demand. The umbrella where I worked at had a turnover of about 1 studio per year and a wait list of over 100 artists. Every art center that I've been connected with has at least that significant amount of numbers. Even if you look at the art centers in Beverly that are already here, the 222 Cabot Street Studios has a very long wait list and low turnover, as does Porter Mills. If you go up to the Gloucester region, you have the Rocky Neck Artist Colony, which has over 280 artists who are part of it, and I believe there are only about 40 studios available for rent in Gloucester, all of which are also full and have very low turnover. So we think there's a strong need for this, both in this area to serve the specific community and regionally. And it's actually a very stable business model. As you can tell from the artists who've been at the Umbrella Community Art Center for so long, artists have a reputation that we're working hard to overcome, but they are actually very strong and stable renters. It's so rare to find good studio space that's affordable that once you get your hands on it, you don't let it go. And so we estimate that based on the square footage and the number of artists, we could make $900,000 just from rental income before any donations, before any fundraising costs or programming. And that would be a steady, consistent, leased and signed form of income that we could always depend on. So the reason we came to Beverly, we were looking for a post-industrial town that was working on telling a new story as it came into the new century. And Beverly was a very interesting place. You have a lot of wonderful arts organizations that are already here, already doing great work. And that's exactly what we wanted to look for. We wanted to find a place where there was strong support for the arts and interest for the arts. But as you can see in our wheel, there's a missing hub. There's missing key infrastructure to support the local creative community in Beverly. And that's what we can hope we can provide by repurposing Briscoe Middle School as a BevArt. We could be the wheel for the hub that already, or we could be the hub for the wheel that already exists and provide a publicly supported place where people in Beverly can come to access the arts, where professional artists in Beverly can have infrastructure to support them, and importantly, where the hundreds of thousands of visitors who are coming because of these arts organizations can access the local artist community. Because a lot of these organizations have missions that focus on bringing in artists from the outside, which is a strong resource for local Beverly. But we also need to make sure that Beverly is supporting the artists who are already here, who are born and raised and went to school in this community. So here are some of our numbers. I won't dive too deeply into them, but the base message is that artist studio space is a sustainable business. It can work, it does work. When you start introducing programming, that's where you start having significant risk. But it's, like I said, a very simple business model. You have raw space, you have artists who want to fill that space and who are willing to pay the money to do it. One of the things that makes this possible is that, as I'm sure you all know, Briscoe Middle School requires quite a bit of work. It has, we estimate, $7 to $9 million of renovation just for the code compliance in the building. And we want to make sure that work happens. But because we would not be changing the use or the zoning of the building, we'd be continuing with education, albeit specifically arts education, we would be able to enter the building without changing the appliance and thus immediately bringing it up to code. So instead of having to do significant fundraising, financing, development, construction, which will take many years, instead we estimate that we could be in that building in under 6 months for under $500,000. So it would be an immediate, quick impact that would support the community, that would activate a part of town that really needs community support and a little bit of infrastructural support. Following the model of Jerome Neeson at Art Space Maynard, the way that we would pull off this initial investment is by identifying potential artists and asking them to sign leases actually in advance of us having the building. Once they signed leases, we would ask them to give us deposits, and we would use that cash reserve to secure bank financing. So we would not need to do any of the public fundraising or private donations, although of course we will take donations if anybody wants to give them to us. But the model works on its own. And I think that's what's so interesting about artist studio space, that it breaks this dynamic that arts are not sustainable, that arts need lots of external support. but artists want to make their businesses work, want to make their practices work, and space is the most important part of that. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about what we're doing now, which is part of why I'm here. We're specifically starting with the people first. Rather than build it and they will come, my education and my experience has taught me that if you bring the people together, they will help you build it. And that's what we want to do. So we actually came to Beverly in July of last year with a tiny house, which some of you actually have been in, I believe. Over 1,300 people toured that house and learned about us right then. So that then, when we came in January to start doing weekly creative community programming in the Cabot, people had already heard of us and they started coming through and asking questions and coming to City Council to hear a little bit more about the story. So we're already starting to gather that group, and we have a strong network, the 25,000 people that we've served so far in Greater Boston. Our next big events are actually 2 festivals that we're excited to be bringing to Beverly, which I hope you will all consider coming to. On June 1st, we're hosting Nourish at the Hale Farm with Historic Beverly, and we're celebrating the art that's already here, which is a big message of this building. Beverly is so rich in the arts, and there needs to be more celebrations that put that rich creativity on display. And so we're hosting these as a demonstration of what could happen. This is what we can do without space. Imagine what we could do if we had a beautiful building to do these festivals on the site around the building. Our second one will be the 5th annual Massachusetts Tiny House Festival, which celebrates creative living and encourages people to think about how they're living and why they live that way. Last year we had 9,000 people show up to Marshfield Fairground, and we're hoping to have at least that much coming this year to the North Shore Music Theater. And we hope that that'll be a big push for Beverly and for the Beverly arts scene. So thank you. I appreciate your time. I would love to take any questions. I do realize this is a big project, and there are many questions that could be asked, and I want to respect the council's time, so I would also be more than happy to sit down in person with any of you. I know I've talked with you some already, but I think this would be a great project for Beverly. It's something I'm obviously very passionate about, and I've been really humbled by the support I've already received on So Far Just an Idea.
Thank you, Miranda.
Sure.
How about questions?